Welcome back to Turkish series stars. Settle in, because today we're unpacking a showdown that left even the most jaded followers stunned. The headline says it straight: Gökberk Yildirim and Cemre Arda, face to face. People called it inevitable, others said impossible, and yet it happened in a way nobody predicted. If you're new here and you love those deep dives that get under your skin and don't let go, you're in the right place. Tap subscribe, hit the bell, and stay with us until the end, because what we're about to unravel is the kind of twist that lingers long after the screen goes dark. Let's set the stage quickly. The journey of Gökberk and Cemre has been its own phenomenon. Two stars with their own gravity, two paths that seemed neatly separate, pulled into the same orbit at the worst possible time, or the exact right one, depending on how you see fate. Encounters that felt scripted by the universe, moments that looked like pure chance, and a rhythm that kept speeding up even when both tried to slow things down. From early sparks to boiling point silences, every step they took seemed either carefully choreographed or wildly improvised. And that tension, between planning and impulse, became the heart of the mystery. How much was calculated? How much was raw feeling? They appeared to the world as a pair who understood how to turn the spotlight into warmth rather than heat. Their interviews, their glances at events, their quiet exits from crowded rooms, their public image created expectations bigger than either of them probably wanted. And expectations, as we know, can be a trap. The question everyone kept asking was the simplest and hardest: how does this end? The comment sections filled with competing prophecies. Some were sure of a grand reconciliation, others insisted a clean break was overdue, and a few braced for something messier, the kind of in-between that hurts more than a yes or no ever could. What made the dynamic between them so puzzling is that it was never easy to read. Gökberk's calm, that steady voice and careful phrasing, clashed and harmonized at once with Cemre's intelligence and instinct for honesty. They weren't opposites. They were mirrors tilted at tricky angles, throwing light and shadows across everything they touched. Viewers tried to decode the microgestures, analyze who leaned in and who held back, who crossed their arms and who softened the edges of a smile. Some days it felt obvious where they were headed, on others, the ground moved and no prediction held. And then, finally, came the moment that reset everything, the face-to-face. Close the door on the noise and picture it. Two people with a long, complicated past, carrying a present heavy with unspoken lines, walking into a room that wouldn't let them hide. Not on a stage, not on a red carpet, not on a set. Just a place where silence means more than applause ever could. Those who were near enough to sense the pulse say truths came to the surface, not with fireworks, but like tidewater that creeps in and suddenly has you standing ankle deep, then knee deep, before you catch your breath. What did they say? What did they admit? The leaks and whispers that followed turned into dozens of competing narratives, but the center of it has stayed stubbornly private, and that's part of why the moment has had such force. Was it a clean reckoning, a settling of scores, or did clarity arrive in a whisper you could barely hear? Did the answers come from a list of grievances, or from a look that said everything without breaking either of them in half? The disbelief was real. The title's promise of breathless shock was earned. And when it was over, it didn't feel like a full stop. It was closer to a question mark you can't unsee, an ellipsis inviting all of us to keep turning the scene over in our heads, searching for the frame where it all makes sense. Part of what makes this hit so deeply is its familiarity. Anyone who's ever tried to navigate a complicated connection knows the undertow here. The way hope and fear trade places, the way timing turns cruel, the way the right words arrive a beat too late. Watching Gökberk and Cemre ride those waves feels like watching our own mistakes in high definition. The choices they made, when to speak, when to retreat, when to circle back, echo the times we've done the exact same dance. When an ending shows up wearing a different face than the one you rehearsed, the jolt goes straight to the chest. Let's break down how we got from promise to aftermath. First, expectations. For months, the narrative around them expanded like a balloon: events, photos, brief comments, unsaid confirmations, the little details that fans string together into a lifeline. That scaffolding mattered. When you've spent so long building a picture, any disruption feels like an earthquake. Second, complexity. Neither of them has ever been flat or predictable. Gökberk can be resolute and intensely private, while Cemre has that brave tenderness that makes her protect the truth even when it hurts. Both have histories, ambitions, and the instinct to shield what matters. That depth made their choices less obvious, which made the outcome harder to see coming. Third, timing. This meeting didn't arise out of nowhere. It was the culmination of sidelong glances, near misses, and those late-night doubts that gather into a storm. By the time they stood across from each other, everything that came before had turned the air electric. So what does a face-to-face like this actually mean? Is it a confession booth where both empty their pockets, or a mirror that shows what words can't? There's an argument to be made that it was both, a real conversation with lingering echoes, and a symbolic turn that pushed the story down a path neither of them expected when the day began. The beauty, and the torment, lies in the ambiguity. The gaps call to us. We fill them with our own theories, our own memories, our own fears about what we would have said in their place. That freedom to interpret makes the ending stick, because part of it now belongs to us. Public reaction split fast. Some voices claimed Cemre should have done more, others defended her steadfastly. Some swore Gökberk carried the blame, others praised his restraint. Still others looked outward, pointing to obligations, schedules, and long hours that twist even the strongest intentions. The division of opinion only proves how alive this story is, and how much truth it holds for different people in different ways. It wasn't a curtain drop, it was a trigger for conversations at kitchen tables and in DMs, the kind that begin with "What do you think really happened?" and end with "I've been there, too." What can we take from their journey? Maybe it's the old lesson that communication is oxygen. Silence can be protection, but it can also be absence, and no affection thrives without air. Or maybe it's about empathy, the willingness to believe the best of someone even when the evidence is muddled. Perhaps it's the reminder that resilience isn't triumph, it's the art of rising in ways nobody applauds because they don't see the ground moving beneath your feet. Each of us can pull something different from what unfolded. For some, it's a cautionary tale about waiting too long to say the necessary thing. For others, it's hope, the door that looks closed might actually be on a hinge you can't see, waiting for the light to change. Because that's the core of our fascination, isn't it? Not scandal for its own sake, but the humanity tucked between the lines, the unguarded moments where we recognize our own tenderness and pride. With their glow and their shadows, Gökberk and Cemre remind us that even people who seem perfectly composed are improvising in real time, trying to hold on without holding back. And when an ending arrives without calling itself an ending, we flinch and wonder how we would have endured the same test. To gather it all, we walked through the building of expectations, the layered complexities, the charged timing, and the ambiguous finale that refuses to resolve neatly. We watched how a single meeting can flip a storyline, and how an unexpected turn can launch 100 new readings of what came before. The story of Gökberk Yildirim and Cemre Arda isn't just a tale you scroll past, it's a mirror, asking us what we accept, what we forgive, and what we keep for ourselves when the lights go out. And maybe that's why the long echo of their face-to-face keeps us awake a little later than usual. There's one more angle worth noting. After the encounter, both moved carefully. No grand pronouncements. No cryptic captions spelling out their hearts. That restraint has meaning. It suggests a boundary that deserves respect, a recognition that not every truth needs to be auctioned off to the loudest interpretation. Yet even in that quiet, they allowed just enough light to pass between them that people who look closely can see the contours of the moment. If there's a map, it's invisible ink, but it's there. Imagine the first seconds when they were finally alone. 2 breaths. 2 heartbeats. A pause long enough to remember the best days and the worst, a pause long enough to see how close they had come to losing the thread. Maybe one of them spoke first. Maybe the other answered with a softness that surprised them both. Maybe the most important line was the one that never had to be said aloud. That's the kind of revelation that doesn't need a microphone. And that's why, as the dust settles, the ending lands like a message scrawled on fogged glass, clear enough to read if you're standing right there, blurry from a step away. Did they reconcile on the spot? Did they decide to step back? Or did they choose a third path, something complicated and honest that acknowledges love and limits in the same breath? The truth is that the answer isn't a slogan. It's a process. A reckoning that continues in quiet conversations, in gentle boundaries, in promises measured by actions, not applause. If you've felt that ache, you know the rhythm. Whatever side you lean toward in the debate, remember this: it takes courage to stand across from someone you can't ignore and tell the truth with kindness. It also takes courage to hear it without turning away. Both showed that. And that might be the most important part of the story, the thing that outlasts the rumors. The proof that dignity and vulnerability can exist in the same room without ruining each other. So here we are, at the end that doesn't end. A meeting that was both a finale and a first chapter, a moment that turned certainty into curiosity. And that's where we'll leave you today, with the memory of a private room, a double heartbeat, and two people brave enough to look each other in the eye. If you've made it this far, tell us what you felt watching this unfold. Did the face-to-face shock you? Did it confirm what you suspected all along? Or did it open a door you hadn't considered? Drop your thoughts below. We read everything, and the conversation is where this story keeps breathing. Before you go, a small favor. If this breakdown kept you hooked, tap like, share it with someone who's been following every beat, and subscribe to Turkish series stars so you don't miss what comes next. We're here every week, bringing you the stories that tug and tangle and refuse to be simple. Until next time, keep your heart open and your expectations flexible. With Gökberk Yildirim and Cemre, the only rule is that nothing is as straightforward as it looks, and that's exactly why we can't look away.